definitely want to basically start the presentation because it is, I don't want to stand between you and people's food. Can everybody see my, what do you call it? Can everybody see my presentation here?
Yes.
Beautiful, awesome. So, okay, so great. Thanks everybody. I really appreciate you being on the webinar. I'm really excited to be
Yes, we
here.
can see.
Awesome, thank you, man. So again, what my goal here today is to help everybody avoid all the biggest mistakes that buyers make when they go ahead and buy a property. And basically, you're going to save tons and tons of thousands of dollars while I'm going to show you all the tricks and stuff that you can do to actually save a bunch of money. But also, you're going to learn the entire process of buying a property, which is awesome, from A to Z. I'm going to literally, I've been on these webinars before and people hold back a lot of details. Please mute yourself if you are. I don't know if you could do that, but please mute yourself as you're getting into
Now
the,
let me meet him.
what do you call it, into the webinar, please. Thank you. Okay. Awesome. So step one, okay, so yeah. Here. Okay, so this is my promise to you. If you stay to the end, I'm gonna send you my book on first-time home buyers. Has a moving checklist, all the rebates, all the grants, discounts from trusted vendors like we have Wayfair, The Brick, and also if you decide to work with our team, we're gonna make you an offer at the end of this webinar. And if you have to jump off early, please, at the bottom of every slide, there's a login to my website. It's bookhani.com. And you can book a time to meet with me if you obviously have specific questions. Okay. Again, who is this for? If you are a home buyer, already you're a homeowner and you want to buy a place, because buying and selling is really complex. So if you have any questions about that, this is for you. If you're trying to build net worth through real estate, this is for you. If you're trying to get a place for under market value, this webinar is for you. And if you want specific information about specific areas close to SkyTrain, you want to have access to pre-sales and stuff like that, again, this is for you. And what I'm going to do here for you is to save you tons of hours on the home research process. Perhaps you are unsure about what's going on right now. There's a lot of confusion about rates and all that stuff. So again, my hope for you is to dispel any of that and let you make the decision. I'm not here to sway you one way or another, but I'm going to give you a lot of information. Hopefully you can feel more informed, okay? So the first thing I want to handle is the elephant in the room. And the elephant is rates have been going up. Okay, I completely understand people are concerned about rates and they're wondering like what's going on. Is this a good time to buy? And the first things you have to understand, the price of anything is dependent on two things: supply and demand. The price of anything is dependent on supply and demand. So this is not something I made up. Go to Google and Google housing supply in Canada by CMHC. This is a report that they came out a little while ago. I think it was in beginning of the year. And they determined that Canada needs about 3.5 million houses, what we call housing starts, to actually keep up with the growth, the population growth, with the biggest disparity coming from Ontario and British Columbia, because these tend to be the two provinces that people go to the most. And again, if you go to that report, you'll see what I mean. It's all in there. So that's number one. We don't have enough supplies. So even though the market, there might be a lot of supply right now, that tends to dry up after a couple of months. That's been my experience. I've been doing this for a while. I'll explain to you a little bit about my experience, but that's what happens. It takes a minute for basically the demand to catch up with supply. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is right now, the unemployment rate is quite high. It's actually the record-breaking low, basically. There's a lot of activities, people that want to live in Canada, and there's lots of jobs, and we keep having basically shortage of workers. And what that means is Canada is relying on the only majority of growth that's happening in Canada is coming from immigration. The average Canadian family is only having about 1.2 child because it's expensive, let's be honest, okay? So just to keep in mind, like the growth is coming. Canada's already committed to 1.8 million immigrants. Now, I'm an immigrant, I love immigrants, and the immigrants I meet are usually really highly skilled. FYI, they're doctors, they're programmers, they're coming here as an investment. So keep that in mind. Like we're not dealing with people that don't speak English or whatever. They're actually quite educated. They're highly skilled or whatever. So just keep that in mind. We don't have enough supply. We have lots of people coming in. So if you are going to bring in 450,000 people a year for the next 3 years, year over year, where do you think these people are going to live? Right? So just keep that in mind. Now, people come to me and they say, hey, man, look, I want to buy, but the rates are so freaking high, blah, blah, blah. And the truth is, yeah, they're high comparative to the recent years. But I want to, this is, again, go Google this stuff. Go look at mortgage rate history over the last, 100 years or whatever, and you'll see prior to 2008, rates, if you look at here, have always been over 5%. So they've only been lower in the last little recent history. And I want to be clear. I want to point out this. This is why I had the data from the Vancouver Real Estate Board, because look at in 1980s, rates were 18 to 24%. And if you look at here, even here, the market still went up, even though rates were going up. And the reason why this happens with rates and everything is because there's a demand, right? People want to live here. So obviously that creates a need for people living here, and that drives up prices. Now, I want to talk a little bit about basically prices. So the average price of a home over the last 41 years, in 1988 was 170,000. In 2003, it was 400,000. In 2018, it was 1.6 million. In 2022, it was 2.1. Now, that's nice, but what does that mean? And I want to talk about, so these are all the areas here. And I want to just, my favorite area, that's what I kind of like when I talk to people, I usually tell them about this area, which is what happened between 1988 to 2003. That was what I would call the flattest growth area. So I don't want to lose people, but basically, and I'm going to talk about what is the rate of return. So basically, again, I don't want to lose people over numbers, but between 1988 to 2003, the rate of growth for real estate has been 5.87. Between 2003, 2018, that was the biggest steep. If you bought a place in these times, that's what was the biggest time of growth, appreciation for real estate, residential real estate specifically, and the rate of growth was 9.68. And the recent, I would say, actually, let me go back. Actually, the recent 4 or 5 years have been 7%. But if you look at from 1988 to 2022, again, the rate of return year over year for detached homes has been 8.17, and for attached, which is condos and townhouses, was 6.97. So again, I don't know what you're investing in these days, but real estate is a pretty secure investment in my opinion. So again, make your own decision. It's not really up to me to tell you one way or another. I obviously believe in real estate. That's why I'm in it. So I think real estate is a pretty good investment. But I want to actually hear from you. What does everybody think? I'd love to kind of hear people's comments about this. Is this pretty clear?
Yes, the rate of return on property is going up, and it is actually something that's more secure than other area to invest in.
Got it. But it's pretty clear to you, right, Hori?
Yes.
Awesome.
So,
Anybody else
Hani,
have any? Yes, sir.
so when you say 8.7, that's year over year. So
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
170,000, and the next year was 8% higher, and 8% every year over year, right?
Absolutely.
Now that's 8% on the total price. But since when I buy a property, at least I'm going to put 20% and sometimes less. So my real return is a lot more than 8%, correct?
Absolutely. So again,
Almost 5 times more.
Absolutely. So here's the beauty of real estate, guys, that nobody will tell you. Okay. And I usually talk about this more in my investor seminar, but I promise you this, okay? Real estate is the most leveraged thing that the bank lends money on. What that means is, let's say you're buying a place for 500,000. Usually most people will have, let's say 20% down, which is 100 grand. So that means your rate of return is 5 times that. So let's just say your $500,000 condo went up by 25,000. So that means your rate of return, really what we call cash on cash, is about 25,000, 25%. So like, again, I don't want to get too much into the numbers, but it's a pretty amazing thing because it's highly leveraged. The bank, like real estate, they know that it's not going to move. It's not like crypto or any other stuff. It's going there. Nobody's going to steal it from you. So, but again, I hope this was clear. Again, all these numbers here are, if you're a math nerd, this is how to actually we make these numbers and how do we calculate them. And that's basically all the stuff. So, but all you need to know is on detached homes is about 81.7 over the last little while, over 30 years or so, and 6.97 for attached. Now I want to talk about a customer of mine who's a pretty amazing person. So this guy came to me a while ago. He lived in a condo, had a lot of issues, and we'll talk about that a little bit, what you should watch out for when you're buying a condo. And this guy came to me, he's like, hey, look, I want to sell my condo, I want to buy a house. And he had a really hard time actually selling his condo. We tried multiple times to sell his condo, and finally we were able to sell it after many, many times, trying. And then eventually we sold it, which is awesome. And finally, he's self-employed, so the poor guy, we had a hard time getting him approved. Finally, we got him approved, and he got his house. It's a great house, and he actually got it for a really good price, way under market value. So he's very happy. And again, it's one of the success stories, and I'll talk about more people during the webinar. This is his one of his testimonials. But now I want to talk a little bit about myself. Okay, so who am I? My name is Hani Faraj. Started as a mortgage broker in 2004 from Ontario originally. Started in real estate 2014. And again, since then, my team and I have been in the top 10% of all realtors and teams in BC for the last 7 years. Year after year, we have over 200 positive reviews, over 700 homes sold. Again, I have a couple of accreditations from NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. Again, a ton of reviews here, President's Club. Again, so just so you know, you're talking to somebody who's reputable, who cares about his, basically my education. And this is my team. And again, I don't do anything about, like, nobody who's successful does anything about themselves. So I just wanted to let you know who I am. And now I want to talk about the first mistake that people make. And the first thing is, there's lots of credits, there's lots of programs for first-time home buyers, and you should be aware of what a lot of people don't know about this, and sometimes they hear about them at the wrong time. So number one is not taking advantage of the first-time homebuyer program and any other government program. So obviously this could be up to 10,000. There's actually more programs, but and I want to just kind of let you know. So first of all, if you have investments in RSP, if it's by yourself, you can actually now invest up to 35,000. If you have a partner, then you both can do 35,000 each. If you're buying a brand new place from a developer, you can actually only pay GST, which is 5%, and then you don't have to pay the property transfer tax. There is a limit of 750, so you can't go above that, and it has to be your principal residence. The third one is first-time home buyer credit, which is a property transfer tax, and that's usually 2% minus $2,000 for the first. And it's the limit is 500. It is a sliding scale from 5 to 525, which will get you a place maybe in the Valley, but even in Vancouver, we just sold a place in Vancouver for 4 something. So it's very doable. It just depends on the area and the type of property you're looking for. But these are the things. There's also some tax credits from the city of Vancouver. So just keep that in mind. We have some other things that we can help you out with. But we have a list of all these things when we meet with you. Number one is decide if you are ready to buy a home. And here's what I'm going to just summarize. There's a lot of information here. If, like, sometimes people come to me and they're like, I don't have a down payment, but I make a lot of money. And usually, like, that's a red flag. And that means you're just spending everything you're making. Usually you want to demonstrate, and the bank wants you to demonstrate that you're slowly accumulating money in the bank. That's why they want 3 to 6 months worth of bank statements. So that's what they want to do. So decide if actually you're ready to buy a home. So that means income, employment status. If you're self-employed, it's a little bit different. How much money do you have? Other investments, credit score. So another thing with credit, so let's say you have a $10,000 credit card, and usually the bank doesn't like it if you go over, like, you utilize, it's called credit utilization, if you're going more than 70% of that every freaking month. So that's why you want, every time you have a credit card bill or whatever, pay it all at once, hopefully, or try to get it down to even below 50%. So don't utilize all your credit cards. Obviously, timing is important. How financially ready are you? So a couple of questions here. What score do you need to qualify for a mortgage? Usually 680 or more. You might, if you put more money down, you might be able to get what we call B lending. How much down payment do you need? 5%, unless you're buying for over 500, and then it's a little bit of a sliding scale, and definitely over $1 million, you need 20%. And what is your your credit history based on? It's your payment history, credit utilization, how many trade lines you have. If you actually own property, your credit rating go up, and what kind of credit you use. There's a bunch of stuff, but if you want to know what your credit score is, go to Equifax or TransUnion, and you can actually buy some kind of credit monitoring system. Again, another testimonial by somebody who we help buy and sell. Okay, number 2 is not getting a pre-approval. This is one of my, one of the things that I really dislike, because I think as a society we're used to, like when we buy a car, we just show up, we pick the car we want, and then we apply. So we're kind of like conditioned to buy first and then pay for later. In the mortgage business, it's kind of, you have a lot of power when you go make a property. You make an offer based on, let's say, just appraisal, not what I call a full pre-approval. So, so getting approval for a mortgage, basically you go to the bank, you give them all your documents, and then they give you an approval letter, which with a rate hold for at least 120 days or 190 days, but depends on the bank. And that gives you, basically tells you how much you're approved for. Okay, now there's 2 ways of getting approved. One is going through a bank. So let's just say I'm a RBC client. I can go to RBC. The guy that works at RBC, and I'm sorry if you do work for RBC, can give you RBC product. Okay, so that's typically how it goes. If you're a mortgage broker, especially an independent mortgage broker, not just a mobile mortgage broker for a bank, that mortgage broker can give you access to a lot more credit, what we call products. So let's say you don't get approved for an A lender, he'll go to a B lender. And B lenders, believe it or not, they're not that bad in terms of rates right now. There's a lot of, they know that people are having a difficult time. So they're usually a little bit more lenient, but higher interest rate, especially if you have a higher down payment. So just keep that difference. I personally like private mortgage brokers or independent mortgage brokers because they don't tend to work like 9 to 5 or whatever. They know that basically if they don't do this mortgage for you, they're not going to get paid. So they tend to work a little harder. Versus my experience with bank employees, they're lovely, and I have a couple of friends of mine. And the only people that I work with, like I have a guy at RBC, he's great, another guy at TD, they really care. So I know they're on it all the time, and but I do have people if you're kind of married to a specific bank or whatever. A couple of other things, couple of mistakes that I really don't want everybody here to make. Number 1, please, please, please know what is your actual employment status. I had a lady one time, poor thing, she came to me and she's like, she thought she was full-time, but actually her work had her at seasonal, which is crazy. Another guy, he was commission car sales guy. Turns out that 99% of his income was actually considered commission, which the bank didn't like. So it kind of gives a little hiccup at the end. Down payment, make sure the bank is the money's in your account and not somewhere else. I had one time, this guy, he had the money in like penny stocks, and one day it was 35,000, the next day it was 5,000. So the deal obviously went to toilet and we had to cancel it. Where your properties actually matters. So like, believe it or not, if it's somewhere in a faraway land, the bank may not like it, or they might want a higher down payment or whatever. If you're self-employed, make sure you have all your taxes up to date. You've done your T1 generals, all that stuff. It's a big one because it's not just like 5 minutes and you're done. Taxes take a long time to do. So make sure you do that. You might require, if you're self-employed, a higher down payment and maybe even 6 months worth of payments in the account. So a couple of mistakes that you should avoid. Please make sure your taxes are ready. Do not move money in and out of accounts. I had a client do that once and the bank didn't like it. He actually got red flagged because he kept moving money out of accounts, and I don't know why he was doing that. Don't move jobs too quickly or too frequently. Make sure you have a good history, at least 2 years or longer in one job. Don't buy a car before closing. Like I've literally had this happen where the guy got approved, we removed subject, all that stuff. And sometimes banks pull credit right before you're closing. And now his, TDS and VDS, what we call gross debt ratio, had been kind of changed. So don't do that. Don't co-sign for somebody else's mortgage or a car loan unless it's a wife or somebody that you care about. But just so you know, it's going to affect you. So again, you need to know what your credit history is. Make sure what you make on paper, all that good stuff. Okay, now, what should you do? Fixed or variable market? To be honest with you, this is my rule. You should use your own judgment. But if you have fixed income, you should use a fixed mortgage, because this is a way to kind of guarantee that you're going to be protected. But historically, variable rates have always been lower than fixed rates. So as long as you can kind of sleep at night without being worried, it really depends on you and your situation. But we can talk about that in depth, and everybody's person is different. Okay. Now mortgage options, how much down payment do you need? Depends on your situation, but under 500,000, you need 5%. Anything between 500 to a million, you actually need about 5% on the first 100,000 and 10% on the remainder. You can obviously put more, but anything over $1 million, you do need 20%. Again, what is your credit based out of? Credit history, utilization, age of your trade lines, how many trade inquiries you have. That's why it's important for you to kind of go to a mortgage. Okay, so what do you mean? Okay, are you talking about this year, the down payment? Sorry, Sumaya.
One more behind.
Sorry, Sumaya, do you want to reiterate what you're?
Yes.
That one.
Yeah, this one, please. Thank you.
Okay, got it. So yeah, it depends on. So do you have a specific question I can answer?
No, I just want to know which option is better.
Yeah. So right now, Sumaya, if you go to a mortgage broker, most likely fixed rates are about 5% or 5.5 or something like that. Variable rates are going to be prime minus. So right now, prime is 4.75 or whatever it is, it's going to be minus 0.7 or something like that. So obviously, variable rate is going to look attractive. You're like, hey, honey, like that looks amazing. I'm going to base my variable rate on that. But what happens in the variable rate, if the variable rates are based on prime rate. So right now, the Bank of Canada says prime rate 4.75. So imagine if it goes up to 9%. Could you sleep at night, Sumaya, if tomorrow your payment went from 4.6, your payment being based on 4.6, maybe it goes up to 9%. How would you feel? Could you sleep?
No, it's
Yeah.
very.
Yeah. So like you might it depends on what kind of person you are. Are you a risk adverse? Do you like risk? I'm a very risk person. So there are some like what I call guardrails for variable rates. So let's just say your rate is based on 4%. Your rate, if the rate goes up to even 3% higher, your payment will stay the same. But then there's a point called the trigger rate. As soon as the prime rates go beyond the trigger rate, then they have to adjust the payments. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
there's a lot of people right now, I have friends of mine, they got approved at 1.2 and they're really close to that trigger rate. Because the trigger rate is 3.85% higher than your approved rate. So, or what your current payments are. So a lot of people, their payments are not going to change, but the amount of principal they pay becomes less and less and less. So it just depends on you. If you have fixed income and you don't have another $1,000 or whatever to pay out of pocket, it might hurt you big time. And just so you know, the payment difference is maybe $100 extra per 100,000. It's not like a crazy amount of money, but to some people it's a lot of money. So I don't want to like judge or tell people like, hey, it's easy or whatever. Does that make sense? Does that
Yeah.
answer your question? Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. So again, so what's my plan B? If you don't get approved with a regular lender, we have a couple of options. Number one, get a cosigner. I literally had a lady one time, she's a young girl, like 24 years old. She came to me, she had no money. She had a job, good credit. So she had her boyfriend's dad co-sign for them. And then grandma gave them 40 grand. So like, there's always options. So typically you can either get a cosigner. That's what she did. If you already own property, you can get one mortgage on multiple properties. That's another option. Bigger down payment, or you can go to a B lender. So there's always other options, but regardless, depends on your situation. Again, I could definitely, my mortgage broker can help you. Again, I'm not going to be doing your mortgage. Somebody else will, because obviously a big conflict, but yeah. So a couple of, does anybody have any questions on that? I have a bunch of, question answers and stuff like that. Does anyone have any specific questions about mortgages? I'd love to answer here.
Hi, I've got a question.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
Bill,
And where are you from?
I'm from Vancouver.
Awesome. Hey, Bill. What's going on, buddy?
Okay, can you tell now? I invest in the United States. I live in Vancouver, but I invest in the United States because the differentials between the rent price ratio is so phenomenally better. So when you
Absolutely.
talk about the appreciation of the houses here, I get that. But if you want to
Mhm.
buy a house for 1.4, 1.5 million,
Mhm.
there's no way that the rent is going to come anywhere close to covering the mortgage payments, and you're stuck in, you can only raise the rent by like 1.5%. So I'm just curious, is
2.2.
how do people buy places, because the rents are so small compared to the prices?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a great question, Bill. To be honest with you, I'm not American, but my wife is actually. And the way it works is that we have something called capital gains, right? So for your principal residence, if I bought a place today for 100,000 and tomorrow it's $1 billion, that could, not tomorrow, but at least you've lived in it for at least a year or more, and you sell it, there's no capital gains tax, which is awesome. In the States, it's more like there's a limit and you got to wait 5 years or whatever. And even on the beautiful thing about here now, I won't lie to you. Like, if you come to me and you want to invest in real estate, I'm not going to tell you to go buy a house. In fact, my whole investor seminar is you got to buy condos, 400, 500, because it has to make sense. Like I have these really elaborate investor sheets that will blow your mind, that literally talk about everything: appreciation, principal pay down, everything. You know what I mean? And we account for everything, basically. But yeah, I get it. But believe me, Bill, again, this is not the point of this webinar. There's something that's going to happen here, and it's already happening in the States. There are corporations buying up thousands and thousands of houses in the States, and that's happening here in Canada as well. And the crazy thing about these companies, they're venture capital backed, they're not selling. So they're buying and holding. Okay. So, we already talked about, I don't know if you were here from the beginning, we talked about how many people are coming to Canada. Trust me when I tell you, rent will go up. It's going to be like that for the next 30 years. I see rent going up a big, probably in multiples, in my humble opinion. It's already happening in the States. So I'm glad you talked about the States. But how do people buy it? I don't know, but they do. And my team and I do a ton of deals, but it's mostly for principal like use, because people have to rent. Like, I'll give you another example. I have two friends of mine, and they're both property managers, and one of them manages 2,000 properties. The other guy manages like 400, 500. And when pandemic hit, I talked to both of them. I said, hey, did anybody not pay their bill? And he's like, dude, everybody paid their bill because everybody needs to live somewhere. And he's like, the people that defaulted were always problematic. So does that answer your question, Bill?
Well, sort of like yes and no, because I'm familiar with kind of like the market here, but I mean,
Yeah.
even like when you say a $400,000 or $500,000 condo, it's still not going to rent for very much, and that's sort of like my problem. I'm trying to find a place to invest in Canada compared to what I get in the United States. And I mean,
I got
as I say, a $500,000 condo, what's it going to rent for?
Depends on where it is, but trust me, even in Surrey, it's renting for 2,000, 2,400. And I wouldn't let you buy anything unless it makes sense. And if it's not in Surrey, it might be in Abbotsford. I've done the numbers even over there. But here's what I recommend, Bill. Go to bookhani.com and book a time with me, and I'll show you some stuff. And we'll do numbers together. Is that cool?
Okay.
Okay, I put the website here. So okay, so anybody else have any questions? Good question, by the way, Bill. Okay. So again, we handle the questions here. So number 3 is going with the wrong agent. Again, I'm not trying to be self-serving, but I'll explain to you what that means and how that kind of affects you. And this costs you a lot of money. And here's why. Basically, when you are picking an agent, if you do have an agent, great, that's awesome. But here's what you should be, what at least the National Association of Realtors says. The biggest problem I think realtors make is whenever they're dealing with consumers is that they're not projecting they're not anticipating their future needs, if that makes any sense. So like I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm dealing with a young family. What happens is just there's a question, leasehold. Absolutely. So sadly, co-op or leasehold will require more than 35% down. Hold on. Okay, so just to kind of want to answer somebody's question. Yeah. So again, finding the right agent. make sure whoever you're dealing with that you're not thinking about just today and your needs, as long as you can afford it, think about your needs in the future. So sometimes I kind of, when I'm dealing with couples, I say, what does your life will look like in 5 years? Guys get really red in the face and they get really uncomfortable. But honestly, my goal is for you not to see me so quickly. And sometimes when that happens, then I know I didn't do my job, but sometimes it's because of budget. So that's number one, is make sure you're thinking ahead, or hopefully your realtor's thinking ahead. Make sure you're dealing with somebody who has previous happy clients, provides a good experience, is really good with communication. That's one of the biggest complaints from people, that people don't communicate very fast, or they're not being kept informed. Integrity is obviously make sure that they're always saying the right thing, and they're consistent, tech savvy. So that they're basically, I don't know who that is, but I'm gonna have to meet everybody. Make sure whoever you're dealing with is using a lot of technology, and because sometimes things are of the essence. So DocuSign, electronic signature, stuff like that. That's important. A couple of other things. So can you buy a property without a real estate agent? Yes, you can. You need a a lawyer. Lawyers charged by the hour, and they're not going to show you properties. They're not going to know what a good deal is. Again, we have a different set of skills. What is the agent responsible for? What we are responsible for is to basically guide you through the entire process from the beginning to the end. And there's this term in legal jargon is called fiduciary, meaning we have to look out for your interest, not my own. Give an example. I'm a team leader. This happens a lot. Somebody will come to me, one of my agents, which I love. They'll say, hey, Hani, my client wants to buy this property, but it's listed by these companies are like 1% realty. I'm going to make $1,000. What do I do? And I said, doesn't matter. You got to do what the client wants. It's not about you. It's about them. So, and I've done that many, many times. Right. So that's what a fiduciary does. They take care, they look after you, not them. How can you find the right agent? Well, for you guys, you're lucky because you're here, and hopefully you like what I'm saying. But if not, again, interview people, even me, meet with me, have a coffee, and see if you like what I'm saying and how I, portray myself or whatever, and keep meeting with people. You don't owe anybody anything, but you owe it to yourself to get a good agent. Does it cost me anything? Again, when you're buying in real estate, the commission is paid by the seller, so you don't have to worry about anything. Again, house hunting. So there's multiple ways we can send you properties. Obviously the MLS, pre-sales, assignments, foreclosures, expired listings, terminated listings. We sometimes do mail outs. Sometimes people come to us and they offer us exclusive listings, and we kind of know about them. So there's a million ways that we can send you properties. But again, we do a lot of research and we find out what your lifestyle is, and then we go from there. So again, how do we kind of determine what your needs are? Again, we do a deep dive. We sit down with you for about an hour or so, and I want to know everything: your lifestyle, your work, your family situation. What is it that you need, and where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And obviously, do you just rely on what's online? And the answer is no. You look at everywhere, and that's what I help you do. Okay. Now, how many homes do you need to kind of look at before you make an offer? To be honest with you, I've made offers with, I remember this lady came in, Jane, lovely lady. She came in from Calgary, looked at 3 homes, made an offer on 1. I've seen where the first person, I do such a good job. We see one house, they're like, I like it, I'll make an offer. And I'm like, really? Okay. But it's kind of like fall in love. Once you know, so there's no set rules or anything like that. So basically if I can't find it online, I'll find it. We'll find a way to kind of find it. We'll kind of go to expired or for sale by owners, and I'll make sure that you find the property you're looking for. Now, other things that I do that are kind of special to our team is what you see on the left here is what we call a neighborhood property report. And what this does, I literally have this software, I put the address in there, and it pulls all the data, which is crime rates, safety, schools, ratings, whether it's French immersion, whether it's anything, literally anything about the neighborhood. You'll know all the parks, all the recreations, all the amenities, the walkability score, all that good stuff. So this is not just the walk score, is everything. It's encompassing. And then this is a Canadian data company. On the right, if you're buying a condo, we do these what we call a condo report, which is it kind of benchmarks it against other places. And Again, we can give you all the documents, all the condo documents, strata documents, but this thing actually benchmarks every strata against other ones. So if you're buying a detached home, we do something called a title review, which kind of looks up all these different things on the title, which are kind of like any easements, right of way, stuff like that. So again, that's something unique to us. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. Now, obviously making an offer, most of the time offers depend on a couple of things. How many other offers are there? If there are multiples, believe it or not, in this environment, there still are. Depends on what the seller wants, like what dates they want, and also depends on you and what your needs are. But usually most of the time you're negotiating price and you're negotiating the date. Most of the time that's what you're looking for. So we put all the subjects, usually we take 5 to 7 days to remove subjects for due diligence. And again, depends on market supply and how long the property has been on the list. I'll give you guys an example that I think will be, like, I think there was a lady earlier on, she asked me this before the webinar started. Don't be afraid to make offers if the property has been in the market for a while. So I had a client come to me, he's wanting to buy a place like really far, and the place was listed for 1.15, and it was already listed before for 1.25, and it wasn't listed, wasn't selling, but my client's budget was only $1 million. So I said, hey, will your client accept 960? And he's like, you're crazy. Then one day he calls me, he's like, hey, bring your client through. I'm like, why? He's like, I'm like, you told me I'm crazy. He's like, just bring your clients through and make me an offer. I'm like, okay. So I made him an offer. We ended up selling it for, I got it from my client for 985. So, you know, the price on the market is kind of like they're, you know, up for negotiation. So don't be afraid of that. So if the property's been there for a while, you can absolutely talk about that. You can ask them. And if it's not this client, it's going to be if it's not this home, it's going to be somebody else's home. Okay. Now, what can a seller do if they don't accept your offer? Number one, accept it. Or maybe they can't. They have 3 options: accept, reject completely, or they can counter it, which is what we encourage everybody to do. Okay. Again, more testimonials, more people, buyers that we've helped. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions about what I just discussed about finding the agent? Any questions? No one has any questions?
Yes,
Yeah, Sumaya, go
so
ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Suppose if the offer is accepted and some reason, for whatever reason, if we can't go with the offer, so what are the consequences on the buyer?
Yeah. So is your question, have you removed subject at this point, or no, you have not?
And I'm not at that stage. This is just a generic
You're just
question.
making an offer, yeah. So typically, let's just say you make an offer on my property and there's a bunch of conditions. I'll say financing, inspection, title, insurance, you know, all that good stuff. Property disclosure statement, as well as like, you know, all this other stuff. So when you make these offers, usually you're doing due diligence. Now, if you're backing out, typically you're not supposed to back out, but you know, most of the time, as long as within that 5-7 days period, you can absolutely back out and there won't be any, what do you call it? Any kind of consequences. And in 2023, by the way, they might put a new rule, which could cost the buyer some money to rescind, which is back out of an offer, unless they have a legitimate reason. Okay, but even then, I don't know how they're going to do it, because that's why we put offers and we put subjects too. But yeah, as long as you haven't removed subject, you should be fine. Let's just say you did remove subject, Sumaya, and you gave a deposit, then depends on what the market did, if it go up or down. If the market went down, then you might lose your deposit. Now, if the market went up, then you may not lose anything because there was no damages. Like if the seller ended up, you know, selling it for more money, then what are they complaining about? You know, you might be able to get your deposit back. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you have more questions like that, again, book with me and I'd love to answer more. Again, not doing property due diligence, this is something that's really dangerous, actually. It could cost you hundreds of thousands, not 20, like hundreds of thousands. Like I'll give an example. Somebody here from North Vancouver, there was the case where somebody didn't put that in North Vancouver, especially if you bought an older house like 1960s, 70s, they used to have oil tanks in the ground. That was a way to basically heat the home. And there was somebody who didn't put a subject to oil tank inspection because they didn't know, they're not from North Vancouver. Again, I started in North Vancouver. I know everything about it, like especially when it comes to detached houses and stuff like that. And what happened was the seller eventually found out it cost him $100,000 to actually remove the oil tank as well as remediate the soil. So again, you're dealing with somebody who's an amateur, doesn't know what to look out for. It costs you a lot of money. But again, due diligence means there's a lot of stuff. If you're dealing with, you need an inspector. So just keep that in mind. Not all inspectors are the same. I have only the best people, honestly. They're not cheap, but they're really good. They're really, 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 really detail oriented. Title review, if you're buying, especially a detached houses, title review is really important. And you can kind of see certain things that could happen. Like sometimes there's a CPL, which is called a certificate of pending litigation. That means there's something going on against the property. Like even a condo could have a CPL. If the builder is suing the condo owners or for work that he did, but he didn't get paid for, you need to be aware of that because that title may not go in your name, or you might take on something that's really risky. Floor plane maps, that's a big thing. Right now, flood plains are a big thing. So that's a big deal. Right now, we're actually checking every property, especially if it's detached, against floodplains. Strata documents, like imagine you've never done this before and you've had somebody hands you 200 pages of documents that you need to go through. You have no idea what to look for. Even me as a realtor right now, I think after doing this for, all these years and seeing 100 all these condo buildings, now I finally understand what the heck to look for. Property disclosure statement, you need to go through that. That's basically a disclosure from the seller, telling you basically what they think the condition of the property is. Insurance, this is a big deal, believe it or not, because insurance has gone up. I had a client once thinking, somebody told her, oh, it's going to be 20, 30 grand. She went and got it, 30 bucks a month. She went and got a quote, was $100. So if the condo building is not that great or has a lot of what we call, claims that might kind of drive, the price of the insurance, and eventually you're going to remove subject and give a deposit. Now that if you're a buyer, you're going to give it to us, and it's not really cash, it's a bank draft made out to the brokerage. That money goes into a trust account, and before you close, it goes to your lawyer, basically, and he does the rest. Now, can you cancel the agreement after agreeing to the home sale? Again, you can cancel it as long as you haven't removed subject, but if you've given the deposit, you might lose your deposit, just so you know. Who writes the offer? I do, based on your lawful instructions. And again, I'll instruct you on what to do and what not to do and what would help your case, depending on what you're looking for. How long can a negotiation go on for? Depends on like basically the situation. If it's like multiple offers, it could be done that one night. Sometimes it might drag on. Like I had a partner of mine, he took on like 4 or 5 days to negotiate a deal because it was a luxury home and he wanted to take his time because he was trying to get a huge deal off of the property. Okay, so that might, change things or whatever. Now, conditional removal, again, once you're satisfied, and we literally sit down, we go over everything, you're satisfied, said, okay, honey, let's remove conditions. And that's what we do. Okay, you sign a document, and then the next day is, typically when we remove subjects, and then you go through. Now, let's just say you've closed on the property, you've, eventually you do a final walkthrough after you've closed and you've kind of been to the lawyer. And usually you're looking for, like, I literally did a walkthrough yesterday, and the sellers had done what we call, like, they had left some stuff around. And I won't lie to you, like, I'm supposed to call the listing agent and complain and all that stuff, but I don't do that. I just try to fix it. I called a junk removal guy. He came in like literally within half an hour, it was all done. And my client was super ecstatic because it wasn't a pain in the butt. So that small stuff, I'll take care of it. The big stuff, then we go to the listing agent and we try to get remedy for the situation. Again, moving in, again, that's part of it. But I have a list of what we call a moving checklist. The best thing we do for bills and stuff, you can go to Canada Post, pay like $80, $100, which it reverts all your bills to your new address up to 1 year. And as bills are coming in, I'm gonna have that little yellow sticker on them. Call the bill or the company or the government and just change your stuff. And that's when you move in and you're happy, hunky dory. But you should do a lot of stuff actually before you move in. But you know, some people are last minute. Okay, again, more happy customers. Again, this is a big one, and I want to talk about it, which is again not a bill, you know, having or not thinking about the whole thing in terms of budgeting. This could be really drastic. I have yet to get one client who sold because they couldn't afford it, but it does happen. Like I've had other realtors of mine who their situation changes or spouse dies or you know their job, they get relocated and they have to sell. But again, there's a lot of stuff. But the rule of thumb is, guys, I'll be honest with you. You should, if you're just living paycheck to paycheck, I don't think it's a good idea for you to buy a house because now you're going to be responsible for more. But if you're always saving money and you always have extra and you're doing all kinds of stuff, then you should be fine. And honestly, if you're dealing with me, I don't know about other agents, I literally like we'll sit down with you. Okay, let's talk about this: taxes, insurance, internet, gas, maintenance fees. You should put 4 or 5% a month on what we call maintenance. Like let's just say you have a house. One day it's going to need a roof. One day it's going to need cleaning. One day it's going to need new windows. That you're responsible for that. If it's a condo, a little bit easier, but even condo fees go up. So it's important to kind of look for that. Again, taxes could go up, repairs could come out of nowhere, special levies if you have a condo. That can, just so you know, special levies, as a realtor who's actually experienced, I could tell you, I could foresee that. Like I've seen that many times. So far on my clients, I'll tell them there might be a levy for $1,000. There might be a levy for $10,000. And they can tell me like, oh, that's going to affect me. No, it's not going to affect me. So again, I can help you kind of determine that. That's why we read the strata document. So again, this concludes the webinar. And you guys, thank you so much for being with me all this time. You've been amazing, attendance. But right now you have two choices. Number one, you can go and find an agent yourself, meet a lot of people, waste a lot of time, and hope and pray that they're going to be the right person. Or you can actually work with me and my team. Now, this is how to do it. Basically, if you want to work with me, you can text this number. It's my cell phone number. Just text me, hey, look, I'd love to meet with you, or I have some questions. Can you set a time to meet? Or you can actually go directly and go to this actual, hold on, let me go back. Sorry. You can actually go to bookhani.com and so again, Pooja, we talked a little bit about this in terms of first-time home buyers. If you're buying under 500,000, there's a you don't pay the property transfer tax. If you're buying a brand new place, you don't pay the property transfer tax up to $750. So it depends on your situation. That's it. Also, you can utilize your RRSPs to buy. So if it's yourself, 35,000. If it's somebody, if you have a partner, then you can put 35,000 from RSPs without any penalty, and they can put 35,000. Also, every city, I think the city of Vancouver has some tax savings when you're buying with them. It depends on the property value and stuff like that, but there's definitely some benefits there. Any other questions, people? Anybody have any questions? Absolutely. Again, if you want to work with me, please book directly, bookhani.com. And again, who's this for? Anybody who's looking to buy, anybody who wants to buy and sell, anybody who wants to know more information about this, about the market we're having. We can have a more in-depth, conversation. If you want to know specific information about, neighborhoods, again, I'm here for you. And here's what I'm offering everybody who wants to buy with us. If you book an appointment with us right now, I'm going to give you a 12-month satisfaction guarantee. And what that means is, if you buy a property and for whatever reason you're not happy with it, we will sell it for you for free, but you only have to pay the buyer commission, which is like 1.3%. So that's what I offer you. Again, we'll make sure we find the property using all the MLS data as well as other stuff. We have a certified program with vendors. So any contractors, we only hire the best contractors. If you do need contractors, and they tend to do a lot cheaper than most people. Also, we have actually vendor programs with the Brick, with Wayfair, moving companies, lawyers. So again, when you work with us and you book an appointment with us, you actually get some discounts. Also, if you're buying and selling at the same time, we actually give you a 0.5% discount. So usually you charge 7 and 3.5. You only pay 7 and 3, which is a pretty good discount. Actually, you only our listing fee is only 2%, and we decide what you want to pay the buyer agent, as well as you'll have exclusive listings to pre-owned properties like pre-sales, expired, stuff like that. So that's the benefit of working with us, obviously. So again, more data, like we talked about the condo software as well as the neighborhood software. Okay, guys, any questions so far? Anybody have any questions? You can unmute yourself and just ask me any questions you might have. Any